Another fallow week in the Six Nations, but thankfully we have some URC to fill the void. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Another round offering a great chance for teams to, get some points while some of the better players in this league are away, with the Six Nations, etc. And really set themselves in a great position for that kind of run to the end of the season as well. We're getting so close now to, that run in, and any wins here this weekend going to be absolutely major for a lot of these teams. So, we're going to have a look at, what we have in terms of the fixtures for the weekend, and also as usual talk about, form for the teams and who I think is going to win each of them. So I'm going to start with the Friday games, and first up we have Munster versus Edinburgh. This is on Friday, February the 28th, and it's a 7:35 kickoff. It's at Virgin Media Park, and it's 5th versus 9th. It's on Premier Sport. It'll be on Now TV and URC TV. It's also on TG Car for anyone that is watching in Ireland. Okay, so let's talk about form of the teams coming in. So Munster have won 4 of the last 7, also 4 of the last 5. Edinburgh have won 3 of their last 7, but lost their last 2 on the bounce. And that Munster run, lost against the Stormers and the Sharks pretty comfortably in both of those. Then they beat the Lions, beat Ulster narrowly, lost heavily against Leinster. Then they beat the Dragons and the Scarlets, both fairly comfortably there. Edinburgh then started a sequence of a win against Cardiff, lost to Ospreys, then they beat Benetton, lost to Glasgow, won the return against Glasgow, and the last 2 they lost against Scarlets, and then Zebre. So the Zebre one was a big one for them, really. Zebre coming off the back of a win, there was no kind of sort of ambush waiting for them around that. They knew Zebre were in good form, but still couldn't pull it off here. And look at this one here, Munster. They seem to be able to time their runs now in this in the URC competition, so that they're coming into form, coming into the last few rounds of the regular season. They seem to be doing it again this year, and given that Edinburgh are on a poor run of form as well, and they don't look anywhere near the same team without those players who are away with Scotland, I'm going to go for a Munster win in that one. Okay, the other Friday night game then is Zebre Parma versus Dragons. This is 15th versus 16th. It's in the Stadio Sergio Lanfranchi, and it's on Premier Sport. It's going to be on Now TV and URC TV as well. And, this is a decent one as well. Zebre, now, suddenly, you would have paired these two together and thought this is kind of a bottom of the league clash. Now, they are 15th and 16th, so fair enough if you look at it as that. But at the same time, you have to agree that Zebre in recent rounds have looked much better than Dragons. And if we look at the form book, we can see that as well. So Zebre have won 3 of the last 7 and 3 of the last 5. Which is, better form than a lot of kind of bigger names in this league as well. And Dragons then have lost their last 7, the last how many, because they won the first game of the season. So I guess it's the last 10 in a row, right? They've lost. That's a really big, long run there. And it's only really their own national team that is on a longer losing streak, than them. And, we saw resurgence in Wales against Ireland last weekend. Can the Dragons find some inspiration from that as well? It'd be great if they could. Not great for Zebre, but certainly great for the URC, I think. Because again, we don't want to see, whether it's 1 or 2 teams could have drifted at the bottom of the league. Don't really want to see that. I want to see both Zebre and Dragons being competitive in this league. Zebre, as you said, 3 of the last 7 they've won. So they lost narrowly against the Lions. Then they beaten comprehensively by the Scarlets, beat Ospreys, lost against Benetton by a point, lost against Benetton again by 12 points, then beat Ulster and they beat Edinburgh. Whereas Dragons, their last 7 games, lost to Benetton, then Connacht, then Cardiff again, then Scarlets, then Munster, and last time out, 25 points, margin against Glasgow Warriors. So, looking at this, Zebre in a much better form of the two teams and coping, without the players who were in the Italian squad, better than a lot of other teams in the league, without their internationals. And I've got to go for a Zebre win in that one. Hope, though, that we do see better performance, at least from the Dragons. Okay, next on to the Saturday games. So Saturday, March 1st. The early kickoff is a 12:30 kickoff. If you're watching in South Africa, I believe it's a 2:30 kickoff. And this is the Emirates Lions versus Hollywoodbets Sharks. It's 12th versus 4th. It's at Emirates Airlines Park on Premier Sport, Now TV, and URC TV. And from now on, just assume that any games are on those 3 at least. And I'll just point out where we've got additional broadcasters, at least here in Ireland. Okay, so form for these two teams then. The Lions, brilliant start to the season, but now they've only won 2 of their last 7. Sharks have won 6 of their last 7, really coming, into brilliant form again at the end of the season. Very similar to Munster, but they're bringing it even harder, honestly. So the Lions, so in their sequence of 7, beat Zebre by a point, then lost to Leinster, to Munster, to Stormers, and then to the Bulls. Then they pulled off a win against the Stormers, and then lost against the Bulls again. The Sharks, in their sequence, they beat Glasgow, then Munster, then Stormers, then the Bulls, then they lost to the Stormers, beat Cardiff, and beat the Bulls. If you look at the start of that sequence as well, like Glasgow, Munster, and Stormers, that's the 3 champions we had in the 3 seasons, that the URC has been going. So it just shows, how much better the Sharks have been in the league this year compared to last year. They were really good in Europe last year, not so good in the league. So this one, I'd love to see the Lions, get a win in this one and maybe get their playoff hopes back on track, because they are kind of almost a forgotten South African team, I think. But you look at just how well the Sharks have been doing, and it's hard to look beyond them. So I'm going to go for a Sharks win, but I'm going to be hoping, honestly, for a Lions win, just because a bit of a soft spot for them, themselves and the Bulls, really, in terms of the South African teams for me. But honestly, I like all of the South African teams. I love watching them, and I love these rounds as well, where they're playing each other too, because there's no moaning about people having to travel a million miles, to play the games or wherever, and you can just enjoy the rugby as well. There's none of the other crap that we hear, when it's other teams involved or wherever. But gonna go for a Sharks win in that one. Next then, we have the 3 o'clock kickoff. Well, one of 2 3 o'clock kickoffs on Saturday, and is the Vodacom Bulls versus DHL Stormers. It's at Loftus Versfeld. It's 3rd versus 10th. And yet the Bulls doing really well in the league this year, but we've seen them do well in the league before. They just haven't been able to kind of produce it in the knockout stages. Got into finals, got to the final last year. They, and they've actually been like beaten finals twice now. And they probably feel like, it must be getting close to their turn to win the whole competition, but they've won 5 of the last 7. Stormers, we're used to seeing them up to pointy end of the table. Not this year, though. They've only won 2 of the last 7 games. So the Bulls, their sequence, beat Benetton, then Connacht, lost to the Sharks, then they beat the Lions, beat the Stormers by a point, lost to the Sharks, and then beat the Lions by 12 points. Stormers in the same sequence, lost to Glasgow, then to Sharks, then 2 wins on the bounce, the Lions, and then the Sharks. Then they lost to Leinster, to the Bulls by a point, and then to the Lions last time out. So in this one here, the Bulls definitely in the better form of the two, and they're at home as well. So you got to give them an extra kind of boost for that in terms of who I think is going to win this, and it is going to be the Bulls, and they're going to plump for there. Okay, on to the next one then, the other 3 o'clock kickoff. That is Leinster versus Cardiff. It's at the Aviva Stadium. It's on, it's first versus sixth, and it's also on RTE in Ireland, so the national broadcaster there. So if we look at the form book, so Leinster won the last 7 in a row. They won their 11 league games in a row so far this year. Anyway, Cardiff have won 3 of the last 7 and drawn 1 as well. So Leinster's sequence of 7: beat Connacht, then the Lions, then Ulster, then Connacht, then Munster, then Stormers, and Ospreys. And Ospreys actually the closest that they've come to being beaten this year, honestly. Only a 3-point win there, and they really had to work for that. Cardiff then, in their sequence, lost to Edinburgh, then 3 wins on the trot against Ulster, then Dragons, and then Dragons again. A draw against Ospreys, then lost against the Sharks, and lost against Connacht. And you look at this now, and you think, another game against an Irish province, and probably going to be, honestly, another defeat for Cardiff there. No Matt Chart, obviously he is now completely seconded to the Welsh national team for the rest of the Six Nations, which means that although he was there for preparations, for the Connacht game, he's not going to be there for preparations for this one or for the game itself. He's going to be too busy turning the Welsh national team around, the test team around, and the guy's doing a pretty decent job so far on evidence of that game against Ireland. Thought he came in there short notice and did a decent job. So fair play to him. And maybe, his charges can, kind of emulate that and put a decent performance in against, what's going to be obviously a second string Leinster team. I don't think it's going to be, we have seen like third string Leinster teams this season, but I don't think in this one we're going to see that. I think we're probably going to see second string, and, maybe there's going to be some players who are actually involved in that Ireland camp, but not seeing game time, being released to perform as well. And I'm going to go for a Leinster win in that one. Okay, on to the next one then. So it is Ulster versus Scarlets, and this is a 5:15 kickoff on Saturday. It's at Kingspan Stadium. This one is also on RTE, and it's 14th versus 8th. Ulster just dropping like a rock at the minute in the table, and like Scarlets kind of sticking around there around the playoff basis at the minute. Ulster have won just 2 of the last 7. Scarlets have won 4 of their last 7, so still in the positive, but they'll have to win this one for it to stay that way. Ulster, their sequence then, they had a win against Ospreys, then 3 losses on the bounce: Cardiff, Leinster, and then Munster. Then they had a win against Connacht, and then lost against Zebre, and then last time out lost against Benetton. Beating Benetton, at half time, and just Benetton came over the top of them. Second half, Ulster really didn't have anything left in the tank. Scarlets then, their sequence, beat the Bulls, then beat Zebre, and that Zebre, beating Zebre by 22 points in light of recent results and performances by Zebre, that's looking like a pretty handy win, honestly. Then lost against Glasgow by 2, lost to Ospreys by 1, beat the Dragons by 17, beat Edinburgh by 6, and then lost to Munster by 21 last time out. So this is a tough one to call. I got my Scarlets jersey on, to kind of represent them in this one. but unfortunately, I'm probably going to back against them. Honestly, not with my head. I think Scarlets definitely in the better form of the two teams. And if they get a decent start, I think they're probably going to win the game. And even if Ulster get a decent start, like Ulster is so fragile now mentally, you could still see Scarlets coming back, because Scarlets do have that kind of bit of steel in them this year that was missing last year. They've got a much better, mental side of the game in terms of hanging on in there and digging out the win. And I'm basically talking myself into backing Scarlets, but I'm not going to change my mind. Again, I say, in terms of just going with pure judgment, I think Scarlets is going to win this game, but I'm backing Ulster just because I'm backing, an Irish team. And some of these backings, they cost me, I think, when I do Super Brew and stuff like that, backing Irish teams that I know are going to lose. But what can you do? You got to back your own, right? And I think, probably a lot of, Welsh fans, know, exactly what that's like, right? Backing your own team, even though you know they're going to lose, you just have to do it. But yeah, I'm going to go for an Ulster win in this. I'm not going to take any credit if Scarlets do win it, because I said my head says they're going to win. I didn't back them. So I'm not going to claim that I did. I'm going to go for an Ulster win in that one. Okay, on to the next one then. It's a Clash of the Greens, Connacht versus Benetton. This is a 7:40 or 7:35 kickoff on Saturday as well, and it is 11 versus 7. It's at the Dexcom Stadium, and this one's on TG Car if you are watching in Ireland. Okay, so form book. Connacht won only 2 of their last 7. Benetton have won 4 of the last 7, so Benetton definitely the form team of the two. And again, it's one where just looking at that, I'm thinking I really should be backing the away team, but I think you know what's coming after the Ulster prediction. So Connacht in their sequence, they lost against Leinster, then they beat the Dragons, lost to the Bulls, to Leinster again, lost to Ulster, lost to Glasgow, then they beat Cardiff last time out. Benetton won against the Dragons, then lost against the Bulls and Edinburgh, then won against Zebre twice, lost to Ospreys by 43 points, 43-0, right? Or something like that. Yeah, it was 43-0. And then bounced back against Ulster, where Ulster just collapsed in that second half. So, again, the head probably says back Benetton. In 7th place, they get a win, solidify their position within the playoff places. But my heart is saying Connacht, so we're going to go for a Connacht win in that one. Okay, then the final game of the round is another 7:35 kickoff, and this is a pretty tasty game here. Glasgow Warriors versus Ospreys. It's 2nd versus 13th. It's a Scotstoun Stadium, and you'd looking at it, you think, well, there's a big disparity between these teams. But Ospreys have picked up a bit recently. They had a terrible start to the season, and then they're starting to climb their way up the table. So Glasgow, starting with them, they've won 5 of their last 7. Ospreys have won 3 of their last 7, and they have a draw in there as well. And if we look at this, we've got for Glasgow, lost against the Sharks, then 3 wins in a row against Stormers, then Scarlets, and then Edinburgh. Then they lose against Edinburgh in the return game. Then they beat Connacht and Dragons. Ospreys in the same sequence then, beating Ulster, or lost to Ulster, then they beat Edinburgh, lost to Zebre. They won against the Scarlets, had a draw against Cardiff, won against Benetton, that 43-0, and then lost against Leinster by 3 points. So a decent performance against Leinster, that last time out. So even though you look at that and it's a defeat, couple that with that, demolishing of Benetton, and then you see, they really have improved recently. But Glasgow, defending champions, they've only got Leinster above them in the league. And, they want to win this one as well, because potentially, the Bulls, if the Bulls beat the Stormers, then the Bulls will have leapfrogged them into second place. And, they might then have, possibly the Sharks as well, closing that gap to them too, before they actually play, their game. And, with all of that kind of, just possibly decided before they play, they're probably going to go into that game feeling like it's a must win for them to stay on track for the season, because they want to, they're looking at now the next 3 rounds where Leinster, have to send a team down to South Africa, and Leinster have been sending, very weak teams down to South Africa, basically taking it on the chin that are almost certainly going to lose both of those games. And it means then, Glasgow, potentially, if they win this one, could, come within a point or two, or even like a couple of bonus point wins and no bonus point for Leinster, in the next couple of rounds, could mean that Glasgow, have actually even things up at the top of the table there, between themselves and Leinster. So this game, in that context, I think is a massive one for Glasgow. Given that, I think they're going to give it their all, and they're going to get a win in that game as well. Okay, so that is the preview for this weekend. Let me know what you think, how the games are going to go, etc., down in the comments.